I want to throw a softball at these bottles. They're totally like the ones at the fair that are weighted in the bottom so they don't fall over. Look how it doesn't fall over. I thought a physical gag would be a great way to open this thing.
Let's make sure these are hot enough. Can you guys all hear in the back pretty well and everything? Okay, well, you guys want to test? This might be a good way to introduce everybody. Why don't you guys give your names, and we'll also hear your volume as well at the same time, okay?
My name's Onur Tukel. I'm the writer-director of a movie called Summer of Blood. Am I supposed to say that? Onur Tukel.
Yeah, this is, promote the shit out of it, man. This is it.
My name is Dan Schechter. I'm a writer and director of Life of Crime, which will be available VOD August 29th.
There you go.
My name is Vasant Patel. Some of you already have met the Patels, and who have not, today 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Champa Patel, and I'm Ravi and Geeta's mom. Meet the Patels.
Hey, I'm Ravi Patel. My sister and I, Geeta, co-directed Meet the Patels, and it's about the Patels.
I think he already introduced us. Hi.
Good morning. I'm a non-Patel, but hopefully by the end of the day, an honorary member of the family. Victor Levin, writer-director of 5 to 7, and thrilled to be with you.
My name is Geoff Tate. I'm a comedian.
My name is Doug Benson, and I'm the world's biggest Onur Tukel fan in the world. I was here to do Doug Loves Movies, and last night Larry and Geoff helped me out with the Benson movie Interruption at the State Theater, and I don't know how we're here this morning.
Yeah, it's incredible. We were out till like 3 o'clock working, literally, and here we are. So we had a great time, though. It was hilarious. Absolutely. I was dreading it all day long, you know, the pressure of being funny, you know, in the spur of the moment. But it was a hilarious evening. These guys are two of the funniest guys in the world. Michael joined us as well, who somehow didn't make it here this morning. But it's great to be here. We're going to talk a little bit about comedy. One of the things I wanted you to do is, as I sit here myself, observing is like this. Look at the face of comedy here, you know. And I think this is what's
mostly Indian.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Right. That's it.
Welcome to the new America.
But I think that's kind of fascinating, the eclectic nature of this. Like, what do all these people have in common? They're all involved in comedy, and yet you could see, just from the faces alone, all the different paths that it took them to get there. And I'm kind of curious, starting down at the end there, like, tell us, now obviously the Patels are from India. Okay, fine. But let's also find out where everybody else is from, because you'll hear, again, I think a very diverse background from each person that led them to this place, and I'm very curious how that origin leads to this spot that we're all sharing right now. So start down at the end there.
Yeah, my name's Onur. My parents are Turkish, and I'm one of the first generations born in America, but we grew up in a very small southern town in North Carolina, a place called Taylorsville. So I think that was a pretty interesting dynamic.
So you're a Southern Turk.
Yeah, I'm a Southern Turk, yes, absolutely. So it was a good dynamic to grow up in, because my parents, I don't speak Turkish, which is very embarrassing. And my joke is, and to announce a joke means already it's not going to be funny, which is probably my way to say, oh, if you don't laugh, then I sabotaged it. But I should be bilingual, because my parents should have just spoken Turkish to me. But my parents were actually learning English at the same time they were raising me. And the thing in the 70s was speak only English in the house, so your kids could be more westernized. So my joke is I should be bilingual, and I'm barely monolingual, because my parents were, yeah, that's about the reaction I was expecting. But it was an interesting dynamic growing up in that home. So Southern Turk, absolutely.
All right, cool. Dan?
My road was pretty rare for comedy, and then I'm a white Jewish kid from Long Island with very supportive parents who thought that I should do this for a living.
You are an aberration, for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty rare. But I don't know. You know, I don't make comedies, I think, in a sense that a lot of the people on this stage do. I think my stuff is inherently a little funny, but I don't know why I'm on this panel, but I'm really excited to be here, and I try to be funny occasionally. And I was just very fortunate that I had very supportive parents, and that I was able to kind of go make films right out of college. I went to Emerson College, and the films I all made had attempts at being funny, but I think I've never made a balls-out comedy in the same way that, say, Onur's Summer's Blood is, because if you don't laugh, I want to make it look like I made a very good dramatic film, I guess.
But supporting characters is very funny. That was the film you did before Life of Crime, though, and that's very funny.
That's true, and that was here 2 years ago.
Champa and Vasant. Champa and Vasant, tell us a little bit about your background, would you?
Yeah, my parents were Indian. Now people ask me, where are you from? And I tell you, I have lived almost double the time in US than in India. So it's kind of confusing how to answer the question.
I'm sorry about that.
I tell people, I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. They say, oh, no, you tell us really where are you from. Because I came to Michigan Tech in 1967 in Houghton, Michigan as a student. And then I lived in Illinois, Freeport, Illinois, Rockford, Illinois. And then we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. So we travel all over. And you have met the rest of the family, I guess. So we are glad to be here.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, my husband is Indian. I came here when I was 19. We married in 10 minutes. That's how much we knew each other before the marriage. We've been married for 42 years. I am a realtor right now in Charlotte, North Carolina. We've been there for, about 25 years. And I have wonderful 2 kids.
I also have Indian parents. We are from Charlotte. Geeta and I both live in Los Angeles. I live in Venice Beach. She lives in West Hollywood. I'm doing your intro again. I'm sorry.
Together.
Yeah.
So we live in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
We finish each other's
sentences. No,
we used to live together, but then somebody thought we had children, and so we stopped living together. True story.
We went to a film thing in Utah a few weeks ago, and they had booked a couple's massage.
Oh yeah, and there was sometimes. Like, we're so close.
I was getting a massage, and there's another massage bed. And I'm like, what's that doing there? They're like, oh, well, we thought Geeta was your wife. I'm like, oh, that's fine. That happens all the time.
It's disgusting. I mean,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
we both work, and, we made the movie about our family, and Geeta's a writer-director, and I'm an actor, and I guess now a director, kind of. Yeah. So, yeah, that's our path to comedy.
Wow, very, very cool. Vic.
It's one of the great show business rules, always follow the Patel family.
Yes.
That's
the initiation to get in.
That's right. That's just where you want to be. Well, like Dan, I grew up in the New York suburbs. Mine was Rockland County, which was the other side of the Hudson River. So we aspired to be your suburb. But actually, our suburb was so dull that there was nothing else to do except try and amuse one another. Because we would have died otherwise. There was no body around. My dad was generally in the bathroom with the newspaper for, the first 20 years of my life. And my mom was just in the kitchen, vaguely disappointed. So you try and write a few jokes.
Geoff, where was your father?
Bathroom. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. My father's a Pentecostal minister. My mom is also vaguely disappointed. And I just like stand-up, and then one day I figured out you could go try it. And I probably shouldn't have done that, but now, 12 years later, I'm here. That's it, right?
Sure.
I'm all done.
I want to ask you a couple of questions about that. I have millions of questions for all of you, but first let's hear from Doug.
Born and raised in San Diego, California. Such an extremely pleasant upbringing that I had to lash out at the world through comedy. It was, I have nothing, there's no childhood scars that led to me being a comedian. It's just like, I was like, I want to do that, and then I did it. and here we are. So you know, moving to LA was like if I'd have been from Cincinnati, like it's the nerve of people from far away from the centers of show business. Like, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they pick up and move there. I just one day just drove 2 hours to Los Angeles. And so it wasn't like, you know, my parents were like, well, if you have to come back, well, you know, we're 2 hours away. You know,
You actually could commute. You could commute.
exactly. Well, I did that for the first few years. You know, once I was old enough to drive to Los Angeles, I just did that all the time because I loved it. Just because, you know, you go to Los Angeles and there's giant billboards with movies on them, you know, and that didn't exist all throughout the United States at that time. It was just in LA, so on Sunset Boulevard. So it was an exciting place to go to, and then I moved there, and I'm not so excited about it anymore.
Well, both, you know, Doug's an amazing stand-up. I just met Geoff, but he's also a hilariously funny guy. I'm curious. Let me talk to the stand-ups for a second here. And Geoff, you mentioned your father's a Pentecostal minister. Your mother's vaguely disappointed, like Vic's.
Yeah.
But and then you said I got interested in stand-up comedy and started doing that. I mean, that to me, from Cincinnati with a Pentecostal minister dad, that's a massive leap in my mind. So tell us how that happened. Like, what was the spark? What was the catalyst?
When I was like 6 or 7 years old, I saw that Bill Cosby himself. And I thought it was great, but I thought that was what he did. I didn't think that you could just be a comedian. And I would see comedians on TV, and I actually had this weird idea where I thought that you would just wander around in your life and be funny, and somebody would eventually walk by and be like, hey, come here.
You're not that far off, actually, especially with stand-up. In a sense, you have to go up on stage, you have to deliver a certain amount of hilarity to an audience, and then the people who are sort of in charge will go, hey, you could do that again.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but you have to do the first thing.
Yeah.
I thought that the first thing would just be like, hey, come here. But you got to
Hey, funny guy.
Yeah.
You've been funny for like 3 years at this Applebee's. Let me show you where...
You wash the dishes so funny. We're gonna move you up to the showroom we don't have.
Now, what were your parents? I mean, I know a lot about it. Somebody like Sam Kinison, who kind of comes from a similar background, where his father was a minister, and he kind of stumbled his way to stand-up. What was your parents' reaction when you said to them, "This is something I may want to pursue"?
Well, I had set the bar so low at that point that. My dad was against it for a while, and then till he finally, like, I don't think he wouldn't come see me for like 2 years, and then he finally did, and he's like, I remember him going, that went pretty well. And I was like, hey, what the fuck, man? Like, I spent the last 2 years doing nothing but this, and then there was something where there was a comic from TV that he knew from TV, and I opened for him, and that guy, like, he met him in the hallway, and then from that point on, my dad is. Like, he comes to all the shows.
He's a fan. He's a fan now. That's great.
But it's like there was a third party with no stake in it. Told him that I was getting better.
Not you, somebody else. Yeah. Now, but Cincinnati. What's the comedy scene? Did you start off in the comedy scene in Cincinnati, or did you move away to start doing stuff on stage, or how did that work?
No, I started in Cincinnati. I didn't know there was a club in Cincinnati. I randomly got a job at a hotel where the comics stayed. And when I went through training, the manager was like, oh, one of the perks is you can go to this comedy club for free if you just you just call them and tell them you work here.
And see, again, this is part of the nature of this as well, in my view, which is the capricious nature of reality. You don't get the job at the hotel. Who knows how, even though you already have the bug, you get the job at the hotel, you're around real comedians making a living in an actual venue. I mean, something like that is kind of like a crossroads moment to some degree.
It was my first night out of training by myself. I was working third shift, about 11:30 at night.
Sounds like Jack Webb and Dragnet. I was working the third shift out of... Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Greg Giraldo came in and checked in, and I recognized his name, and I was like, and then he just started talking to me, and then I was listening to, like, there was like an Elvis Costello record had just come out, and he was like, you mind if I listen to this record? And I was like, yeah, just, I guess, bring it back to the desk when you're done. Like, I didn't know what to say, but he was like, no, like, just start it over. And he just sat there in the lobby for an hour and listened to this record and talked to me. And I was like, well, this guy's like a regular guy who just became a comedian. Like, that was like that moment.
Right, you can start to see yourself in that kind of a situation.
Yeah, when you first start out doing stand-up, it's very easy to feel like, you know, you look at all the greats doing it, and it's impossible to picture yourself being anywhere near as good. So that's very
what was your catalyst?
Crippling in the early going, you know.
What was your catalyst? I mean, you talk about San Diego, and you're sort of kidding around about being close to LA, but it's still a world away from LA in many ways. And what was it that got you on that?
Well, I was hooked on comedy albums as a teenager. I listened to like Bill Cosby and Steve Martin and George Carlin over and over again, and like I've watched like Saturday Night Live and the early Letterman. I watched that stuff from the beginning. Like, that was my thing, is I wanted to stay up late and watch, and I didn't know that I wanted to be comedic in any way. I just loved that stuff. So I was absorbing it all the time, which is that's how you can get into and become a decent comic, is just by seeing a lot of it and just sort of, you know, just knowing all the things that have been, you know, done over the years. And so when I moved to LA, I wanted to be like an actor and a writer, and some friends, like 4 months after I moved to Los Angeles, some friends dared me to try stand-up. Like, you know, I think a lot of stand-ups kind of start that way, as people, friends and family are saying, you're funny, you should, you know, do it on stage.
So you did like an open mic type of thing?
I did the open mic potluck night at the Comedy Store on Sunset Boulevard, where you have to get there at 3 in the afternoon and sign up. And my friends said, we'll do it too. Like, it was the 3 of us. Let's all go up and do it. And the other 2 guys, of course, bailed, and I went through with it. And I did like, you know, they only give you 3 minutes. And I got a couple laughs in my 3 minutes, so I never stopped doing it.
Well, that's also part of the addiction, I would say, too, is like when you hear the laugh, you know, it's it's like when a gambler, the first time a person who has like a kind of a gambling energy gambles and wins, it kind of starts to kind of feed that addiction. In a sense, if you had gone up and bombed perhaps that first time,
that might have been it.
Yeah, I mean,
might have been like, oh, this isn't for me.
Yeah, exactly. So they're getting that laugh, having an inherent ability to get a laugh on stage, is something that also propels you as well. You know, it's like, oh, I could do that. You know, I'm standing on a stage and this is real, and I'm getting a laugh from an audience, and suddenly you start to be able to see a scenario in which you can actually do this, which is amazing. Let me change a little bit here and talk to Vic and maybe Dan as well, because you guys are really sort of behind the, as hilarious as they obviously are. They're more behind the scenes kind of people. I know Vic. Vic and I worked on Mad About You together. Vic also worked on Mad Men, and he only will work on shows with Mad in the title, which I think is kind of interesting. But
see his new movie, 5 to Mad. What?
But Vic and Dan as well. Tell us, tell me, Vic, because I know Vic obviously for a very long time, but I really don't know your journey from Rockland County to where I met you. And so what was it that got you sort of going?
So at that time, Rockland County, it still is, was about an hour and 15 minutes south of the Catskill Mountains. And the Catskill Mountains were still a place where comedians would go frequently to work. It's no longer the case, unfortunately. That whole region has just not held up very well economically. And a bunch of them lived in my hometown. Freddie Roman, I don't know if anybody would know these names, Morty Gunty, Myron Cohen, Dick Lord. And wildly enough, they all had children. And some of these guys were my age. And so we wound up, when we were kids, somebody's dad, who was a comic, would take us up to the Catskills, and we would watch the show. And the show was always great, but the show was what we call jokey, right? Where there's a very, set up, punchline, laugh kind of thing. And that was terrific and instructive. But what was even better was going to the coffee shop at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they would let us sit around the table while they had their, their corned beef sandwiches and their coffee, which, by the way, is enough acid in one meal to just kill you for the rest of your life. But they would have it, and they would laugh, and they were filthy, and they were funny, and somebody would tell a joke that no one had heard, and there would be a jump off. Like, I remember one time, they were telling jokes trying to see if anyone had heard them before. How is 60 Minutes like a Jewish mother? They both start with...
I didn't know we could do material on this panel.
Yeah, so it's exactly that reaction at the table, but from, a dozen comedians. And now there's a fight for the joke. Right. I'm telling that joke at Grossinger's. I'm telling it at Brown's. You can't tell it at Brown's. I work at Brown's. I want to tell it at Brown's. And then from that conversation, I don't know if anybody ever saw the movie Broadway Danny Rose.
That's exactly what I thought of when you started saying there all these guys sitting around a table.
Yeah, so you're laughing so much, and these rhythms just kind of soak into your bloodstream. And it's more the rhythm of the conversation than it is the rhythm of the jokes that you heard in the show. But that's there too. And you kind of take that amalgam with you when you leave, and then you go back to your parents and it's miserable and nobody's talking. And so this is the language that you start speaking, and you speak it with your friends who've had the same experiences, and before too long it becomes a way of life.
But you're talking about your buddies as well. I mean, you had also kind of friends that you sort of traded stuff with, and what was it? What was it for you? When was that decision made in your mind that I could maybe do this as a living? I have some natural affinity for this or proclivity for it.
Well, Freddie Roman's son was the late Alan Kirshenbaum, who created Yes Dear and gave me my first job.
Right, and so he was a buddy from childhood.
I knew him since 3rd grade.
Right, got it.
And in our high school was Phil Rosenthal, who created Everybody Loves Raymond. I mean, there was a strange...
Good high school.
Yeah, it was something in the water, right?
Yeah,
so it seemed, and Phil and Alan and I all worked together on a couple shows in the early 90s. So, it seemed possible, because those guys were ahead of me.
Right.
And they kind of demystified it a little bit.
Right, which is very helpful also. Demystify,
helpful.
even like in Geoff's case, or in Doug's case, it's like you need a demystifying moment where you go... You're here on this side of the reality, and you make that transition to the other side where you see yourself in it.
I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, Dan, but from my perspective, growing up there, the moving image, TV and film, that was like on another planet. That was like another continent, and no one knew. I mean, we knew how to become doctors and lawyers. You applied to school, you tried to get good grades, and then, there was a path.
But the uniqueness of having friends also sort of on the same path potentially as you were, that may have, again, helped you in the sense of being able to demystify the process.
Exactly.
And see that it was possible. And their dads are kind of hanging around, and you're seeing their dads both as stand-up comedians on stage, but also as people.
Yeah, and also, the last thing is, you can't minimize what Doug said about listening to comedy albums. I mean, for people of a certain age, what you did when you got home from school was you listened to David Steinberg, you listened to Robert Klein, you listened to Lenny Bruce, you listened to George Carlin, and this was, I mean, I remember the first time I walked on the Mad About You stage, and Paul Reiser, who I had seen in the clubs since I was, 15, I'd snuck into the comic strip or the Improv or Catch Rising Star, and David Steinberg was directing. I couldn't believe it. I mean, this was royalty. I still remembered all of his bits. I did them for him, and that's very nice. Please be quiet. We have some work there. But you can't minimize the way the language, sort of soaks into your bloodstream.
Yeah, I met David Steinberg, actually, when I was parking cars in Los Angeles. If you remember where the Amundsen Theater was in Century City, there was a health club there, and he used to come in, and I would park his car, and he used to have massive roaches in his ashtray. These gigantic, which is the perfect crime. You'd steal the roach, smoke the roach. He couldn't call the police or anything like that. But that's how I got to know him and got friendly with him. I wound up writing for him and wound up being his boss on Mad About You and almost firing him at that point. But anyway, very influential person, David Steinberg, of a certain vintage. But Dan, you're a bit younger. So what was your sort of trajectory?
That's what I'm thinking. Listening, I don't think I'm wildly younger, but it wasn't so crazy for me to think that I might want to do film or TV.
Well, first, not to interrupt, but just to sort of give some more background and elaborate on it, tell us about your parents a little bit. Tell us about what made you think that you could possibly do this. What was the environment that produced that?
Oh, sure. My family was in the jewelry business, again, to make me seem like the most typical Jewish guy from Long Island you've ever met. But they were all really into movies, and I even had an uncle who I think tried to make it in L.A. He tried to be a screenwriter. He worked on soap operas and stuff. He's still always now pitching me ideas because now I'm his way back into the game, But I remember watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as a kid, and he's like, I know the guy who writes that. And it was like mind blowing to me that he knew someone who wrote that cartoon.
Again, a demystifying experience. I know a guy, I know an actual human who does this for a living, somehow clicks in certain people's minds and makes it sort of palpable in some way.
Absolutely, but I think as the generations now go on, and this is really true of people who are 10 years younger than me, it's not that alien to them. The joke about being a Jewish lawyer or doctor would almost be just as appropriate now as being a filmmaker or, you know, now with YouTube and the internet and digital technology, it's such a huge game changer. So when I hear you guys, I mean, it was too irresistible for me to cut to the front of the line and try to go make my own feature film as a director, but I didn't earn my stripes. I didn't start in writers' rooms and, you know, open night clubs and stuff like that, so.
You're saying we're much older than you.
Well, that's, you know, I'm saying sometimes I don't like that I didn't have that kind of training. I didn't have mentors. I didn't have older people around. I don't have those kind of stories to go to. I was playing with live ammo right out of college in a way that I think. But
I think even not to interrupt again, but I think even the college experience that sort of became a path. Almost like you're talking about doctors. To be a doctor, you have to go through school and get that license. To be a lawyer, you have to pass the bar. There is a path for that, but there was not a path for people interested in comedy, really, when Vic and I were growing up. It was kind of like a very haphazard process. And the people before us, it was even more haphazard because they were often immigrants. And, you know, how do you get into show business? And we'll talk to the Patels about that, too.
Did you once tell a story?
The immigration part?
Yes, exactly.
When you, at the very start, did I make this memory up? But at the very start, you would be outside the comedy clubs.
I used to stand outside the comedy. I mean, but again, you're hearing the story from all these people of like, how do you get into show business? It seems so far away, and how do you make it real? You know. And I used to, when I got to Los Angeles, I'd be parking cars, and then when I was done parking cars, I would write jokes, and I would stand in front of the Comedy Store, and this is in the late 70s, and if I saw a comedian I recognized, I was like, you want to buy a joke? You know, and I would, they would buy it only on a consignment. Like Jay Leno would go up on stage, if it gets a laugh, I'll give you $10. And that's how I started to make a living as a comedy writer. I became somebody who had good jokes, basically. And one of those guys got a TV show and, you know, got me hired on the TV show. So there are all kind, again, these strange paths to the same place, but they're all very different at their origin, you know. Let's talk to the Patel family for a second. Ravi, you're in Los Angeles. You know, your parents are from another country. What's driving you to think that humor or filmmaking or the arts is something that, you know, you could achieve?
I mean, self-loathing, I think, ultimately has to come into play. When, I don't, you know, I didn't grow up wanting to be in comedy. It seemed, you know, I was one of those guys, definitely like where you guys were. You know, everyone always was telling me that I could be a comedian and I should work in, you know, that I could essentially make a living off of my personality, which then sounded quite like a bad idea and narcissistic, and that's has since been confirmed. And
had you thought about doing anything else?
No, I didn't put much. I mean, you know, I partied a lot, and you know, I was Indian enough where I did very well in school, and then I could still get, you know, I was an investment banker after college.
You're not telling the story right, because you kind of, you know how you're saying you were hoping somebody would just give you a job if you were funny? That's kind of how it started for you.
Yeah, but I think that's what I was going to. I mean, like, you know, like first of all, the comedy, if you watch our movie, I don't know, how many of you have seen Meet the Patels of our, you can see where it comes from. These two are pretty funny people, and so, you know, I think it was always in me, and just, you know, I think comedy on a very basic level, just like any art, comes from a wanting to connect and combine, and so I mean that very much comes from kind of the family structure that I was raised in. But yeah, I did the banking thing. Geeta also worked in finance after college, so we were on, you know, mom and dad were happy, everything was going well.
This isn't the right story. He's just being. I was in LA working. He came to visit. My friend was in casting. Ravi has always been, you know, the clown. He's always been in all our home videos. He's like, "Hi, mom," you know, in front of the camera and everything. And we were at dinner, and one of my friends in casting was like, "Your brother is hilarious." And she said, and she had him come out for an audition. And next thing you know, he kind of went the reverse way of the rest of us who were like getting coffee and, you know, working years and years. He came in, he got a job right away, got agents right away, was in commercials, and then started, you know, training and everything else and studying like crazy and right? I mean, that's kind of...
No, I didn't study that much, but But that's very sweet of you to say. I think. No, work ethic has never been a strength of mine. But you know, it's an interesting way to enter comedy and to enter art, for it to just kind of happen, because, and I'm interested to hear everyone else's experience with it, because for me, I didn't really begin to understand my relationship with comedy and what its significance was to me personally and what I wanted it to be for me till, you know, quite recently. And I'm still on that journey, but, you know, there was a point at which, you know, I was doing it for a living, and, you know, this was probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I found myself extremely unhappy. And I realized that I was doing it just for money. And doing art just for money.
Not to interrupt, are you talking about doing stand-up, or are you talking about the acting gigs, or what?
I was making a living as an actor. Yeah.
Okay.
And though I have done some stand-up. And you know, I was like, why am I so unhappy? Like, I'm so lucky to be doing this. And I think it's because when you pursue art or any craft as a living, no matter how much you decide that you want to pursue this as a career and you want to get paid for it, and maybe, you know, maybe you're also pursuing it because you want the power or the fame or any of those other things, at the end of the day, if there isn't an inherently artistic pursuit in all of that, you feel like you're betraying yourself, and it's hard, you know, it's hard to reconcile, I think, the craft with the career. I think that's what everyone kind of, I assume, struggles with. So, I don't know. I'm interested in.
No, but I think that's a true insight. I mean, I think everyone would share that feeling of trying to balance that out somehow, of doing the thing that your muse is telling you to do, and dealing with the practical reality of having to survive.
They used to say one for me, one for them.
Right,
That used to be the rule.
But the danger of that,
it's now
of course,
7 for them and 1 for me.
I didn't mean to step on your joke. I'm sorry.
We'll talk later.
You have to be careful about, you know, you get on that boat of like 1 for them and 1 for me, and that 1 for them boat is moving a lot faster away from the shore. And sometimes you lose your way. Yeah. Onur, let me talk to you for a second. Because again, you are of immigrant parents. You must have felt alienated at some point in the situation that you were in. Tell us how you got from that place to this place a little bit.
Well, my dad was pretty singular in the fact that, you know, he was just his own person, and he didn't let anything kind of affect. He never cared about what people thought. He was the kind of guy who would buy size 16 shoes, even though he had a size 10 foot, and he would fill it with newspaper just because he just liked the way the shoes looked. They were more comfortable. He joined the golf course in our hometown. This is no lie. He joined a golf course, and he was a Tarzan fanatic. He loved Tarzan, and he set up an actual trapeze in the trees and would swing from one tree. I mean, not like 7 or 8 like one trapeze, so that, you know, the football coach and the town mayor would be going by, and they would say, "Is that Dr. Tukel?" And it would be my dad. He'd be swinging from one thing. So my dad was weird enough as it is, but, you know, which was great.
What kind of a doctor was he?
He's just a family practitioner. You know, he probably should have been a psychiatric doctor. They should have did psychiatric evaluations on him. But when I grew up, I mean, there's so many things that influenced me. Like, I know that, Doug, you all did the Roadhouse. You all did the Roadhouse thing last night. And I remember growing up watching cheap horror films with my friends and just making fun of them and just laughing and just ripping them apart and having a great time. I remember watching Buddy Hackett at a young age, just on HBO. I don't know if anybody remembers the comedian Buddy Hackett, but yeah, I mean, as a young child, I didn't. I mean, it was to me amazing to me. I still remember specific jokes that he would say, like, so-and-so had acne his whole life, and then he got shtuked. Does that mean to get laid? Is that what is shtuked? Okay, shtuked. I mean, I assume that's what it meant. And then his acne went away, and it stayed with me. Like, when I've dated girls with acne, and, you know, if their acne goes away, I think I'm a pretty good lover. You know, that kind of thing. So I mean, so things like that stay. And then, but you know, and obviously comedians, George Carlin, most brilliant comedian to me ever that lived. I really enjoyed Eddie Murphy growing up. I was at the age where Eddie Murphy was pretty amazing. But when I got to college, I never connected with comedians. I could never have the discipline to do that, or I was just too terrified. When you make movies, you can hide behind the fact that it's up there, and I don't have to be anywhere in the room if people aren't laughing and if people hate the movie. But it was when I saw Kevin Smith's Clerks, because I was in college, and the thing about that was an independent film movement where, wow, it's possible to actually make independent films. They're actually being seen. That the Weinstein, it wasn't the Weinstein company at the time, it was Miramax that ended up buying that. And it was very practical. It took place in one location. It was, you know, and it's basically Kevin Smith doing a stand-up bit through different voices and characters, and he was giving his voice in the movie. And I made my first movie after college a couple of years later on black and white in one location. I even used, I don't know if anyone's seen Clerks, but there's like a little title that comes up between every chapter that has a word that represents what the next scene is going to be. And I actually even did that. So I felt like that was my connection, my way of thinking, oh, I can enter this world of using my voice in a format that's not stand-up comedy, which it never occurred to me, but like I can make a film with something to say. So my films now are basically, I think, have been told, you know, stand-up routines that are just, you know, through different characters in one or two locations, because I do things that are very pragmatic and very cheap. So yeah, so lots of different influences from all over. You know?
Incredibly eclectic group of people. I mean, again, this is the illustration I wanted to make, is like these people could not be more different from one another, and yet all wound up in the same place, had some kind of spark, some sort of catalyst, some sort of sometimes happy accident that kind of awakened some sort of spark within them that they would have a possibility to be able to do this for a living in some way, which is amazing. Why don't we start taking some questions from the audience if there are any? Does anybody have any questions they want to ask? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Matt, about you, there's my favorite episode is with Mel Brooks.
Right, I think actually Vic and I wrote that together with Mel.
Yeah.
What was that like to work with Mel Brooks?
Well, I mean, I think that it was, again, I've had the good fortune, and Vic has, and some of the people on the panel may have had as well, the good fortune of working with some of your idols. Mel Brooks is in this kind of category. He's in this pantheon of comedy. I mean, he's one of the all-time greats. He's like the Hall of Famer, the Babe Ruth of comedy. He's one of those people. So to be able to sit in a room with him, as he sat in a room with Sid Caesar before us, and sort of riff with him and play with him and structure and construct and actually be creative with Mel Brooks as peers, I think for myself, and I would bet for Vic, and we'll hear his opinion in a second, but it was an incredibly exhilarating, pinch yourself kind of experience. And we did it a couple of times.
Yeah, I think there were 3 or 4.
Yeah, and he wound up getting nominated for an Emmy for the role that we wrote all together. And he was a joy. He was such a pleasure to be around. It was like being with your dad, you know, or your ideal version of your dad, in a sense. You know, he was a very paternal, generous, warm, and super, super funny person, as you would imagine.
The hardest thing about it was he kept making Paul Reiser laugh in the actual shot. And we would get into editing, and Mel would say something that, you know, he wasn't supposed to say, but it was perfect, of course. And Paul would start laughing.
There's a lot of shots, if you notice in those episodes, of the back of Paul's head, because
Suddenly
he was,
the camera's swinging away.
You couldn't cut it together.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was fantastic. I mean, having the good fortune of meeting the icons, the people, we're talking about people who got us into doing this, and Mel Brooks, I think for a lot of us, was one of those people and remains a vital presence, you know.
And that was pre-producers.
Right.
You know, and Max Brooks, who's now the world's leading authority on zombies, apparently.
Yes.
You know, this
he was
guy.
there. Right. Exactly.
But the last thing I'll say in answer to that question is, this is one of the most amazing encyclopedic minds I've ever come across in my life. And I know Larry would agree with this. I mean, you start the guy on any subject, funny or not, and he knows stuff. I don't know how he knows this stuff. And it informs his comedy. There are references that come out that just kill you laughing that nobody else would have come up with. I mean, the word gets thrown around a lot, I know, but he's a genius.
I have a question. I know I'm not in the audience, but can I ask something about the Mel Brooks thing? Do you mind?
Sure. Okay, raise your hand first.
You need to go down.
Into But when you work with someone who's a hero, because I guess I've never done, of course, anything like that, is it demystifying in that, oh, wow, we do the same thing, and he had some bad jokes, too, that does it make them seem mortal, or you're just like, wow, that is another level I'll never reach in my life?
I think it makes them seem more immortal. Right? Yeah. Because we know how hard it is to do, and, you know, we do it at whatever, you know, middle class level we do it at, and then a guy comes along like that, and you see
there are also stages.
The smoothness of the swing, you know, the ease of motion, the ease of delivery, this quickness of mind, and you just think, I don't know how that works.
Well, that's sort of the mystery of it, which is kind of nice that there is still a mystery to it. But there's also these stages that you go through. I mean, both of us had already been working for many years professionally and doing fine, but you meet someone like Mel Brooks, or you actually get to work with him, and it's like another one of these demystifying experiences. It's like, oh, he's from my neighborhood, he started this way, he did this, he had a capricious moment, a crossroads moment that was a catalyst to push him forward. You know, there's nothing in his background, nothing in Woody Allen's background, nothing in Bill Cosby's background, or any brilliant creative person like that often that would suggest that they are going to become who they wind up becoming.
Wait, Larry, I don't feel like you answered the question that you asked all of us about, like, the moment how you got in comedy. I feel like, do you guys even know who he is? He's a really big deal. You should have done that.
Yeah.
This is, like, terrible moderating.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I fucked up, sorry. Very quickly, because I really want to hear from them, but very quickly, my dad was a failed comedian. His professional stage name was Psycho, the Exotic Neurotic. Okay? And he used to drag me.
Is that Psy, like S-Y?
Yeah, S-Y,
Oh,
like
goodness.
Psy, like Seymour.
Sure.
Co, and the Exotic Neurotic.
Seymour
yeah.
Co is his full name.
Amazingly, he did not make it. This is the amazing thing. But he would drag me. He went to he got out of World War II and went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts on the GI Bill, and wanted to be an actor and a comedian and all these kind of things, and didn't work out. But all his friends that were in that dramatic school wound up staying in show business, not as actors, but as lighting directors and stuff. And I grew up in Brooklyn in the comedy ghetto where Mel Brooks is from, Larry David's from, a lot of Woody Allen's from there. And so that was almost like in the water also, like Vic was talking about. And my father would just drag me to the city all the time. He wanted to go see plays. Jason Robards Jr. had been his teacher. So we would go behind, and his friend was like the stage manager of the Ed Sullivan Show, and he would just drag me when I was a little kid, and I would see behind the scenes of a lot of this stuff, and I was fascinated, almost like seeing a magician's tricks of how TV shows were done. It wasn't just what you saw on the screen. There's a whole apparatus that goes on, and I became very transfixed by that. And plus, my father's also working me all the time. He's asking me, trivia questions all the time, and I have to do impressions for him, and all that kind of stuff. And we're talking about Jimmy Cagney movies, and he'll say, who's the female lead, And it's all, so he was like, he sort of schooled me inadvertently to sort of make up, I think, for his own feeling of failure or letting go of that world that he was still so attracted to. And that was, but again, going from that point, as all of you have talked about, going from that point to making a living at it, that was crazy. And I showed a movie last night about a friend of mine, Adam Leslie, who was a professional stand-up when he was like 17 years old in high school. And I remember seeing him on stage and thinking, my God, somebody who goes to this high school is actually making a living as a comedian, and I started to kind of think about how I could fit into that world. Again, the demythologizing of it, the making something into a tangible reality, that was another catalyst. And I think you have a series of catalysts that keep pushing you forward. If you're lucky enough to have mentors in some way, if you're lucky enough to have kind of those crossroads moments, you are pushed forward and pushed forward, because it's a very, very competitive, difficult, painful world, particularly when you're starting out, and everybody's trying to make it. There is a kind of a grasping and an ambition, and very few people are handed this on a silver platter, So you have to be willing to embrace failure. I mean, all those aspects of it are very important. Your resilience in the face of that kind of stuff is often what's going to propel you further. We all have, and I can speak for myself certainly, lots of friends who started out at the same time who aren't in show business anymore, because they couldn't take the constant challenges of it. They would just sometimes would break you down, and some people could not build themselves back up again. So you need an emotional center of some kind to be able to go on. And I think you see, as neurotic as this group is, they're very strong-willed, very centered people also, at the same time. And they've reconciled that dark muse with a sense of survival, and that's really important also. So anyway, that's a little bit of a
thank you, Larry.
My answer to that. You're welcome.
Back to Mel.
Now we're out of time, man. Let's go back to questions. Does anybody have any other questions? Yes, ma'am, right there.
You guys don't have to leave. He was kidding about being out of time.
yeah.
No, you really don't. Okay. Sorry about. We did drop a couple F-bombs. That's probably why she's getting him out of here.
I think they were warned about that, but.
Not Mel Brooks fans. It's not our fault.
Hi, all. As an outsider, it seems to me that the comedy you're speaking of is very gendered against women. Like, none of you have once named a woman comic in this country that has inspired you. So I'm very interested.
Okay.
Remove that woman
So
and the woman
I
sleeping
would
next
like-
to her. Get them out.
Hold on.
So I would appreciate hearing your perspective about why perhaps comedy is more difficult for women to, if that is the case, and why women comics have not inspired or supported you in the life that you lead.
Let me jump in and then please after me. I think you make an excellent point. I think it's a fantastic point. I think to a large degree, and again, this is where you guys please jump in. I think it's a generational thing to a large degree. I think that sexism in general was very prevalent when we were kids, and the idea of a woman being a comedian who could actually talk about stuff that Lenny Bruce could talk about, or that Bill Cosby could even talk about, was not really acceptable, socially acceptable at that time. So you had Joan Rivers or Toady Fields that were comedians who were very popular, but basically they were, or Phyllis Diller, who were trafficking in how shitty their lives were, or how shitty they looked, or what was socially acceptable to talk about at that time. So there was no way that someone like Vic or myself of that era would look to those comedians as role models. I think generationally speaking, that is very much shifting. I mean, we have a lot of very cool female comedians, and I think the generation that follows them will be citing a lot of those women as influences. You know, if you look at Tina Fey or Amy Poehler or Mindy Kaling, you know, there's a lot of fantastic, very, very smart, very original female comedians now. That just simply was not the case when we were kids.
And all the people he just named came into their own after we all started doing this. So it's not. I mean, if there's a problem with us not naming comedians,
it's societal. That's a culture. It's a cultural issue in a way.
And I said I listened to SNL records a lot, and the reason, like, you know, I didn't cite her by name, but Gilda Radner was an amazing comedian and influence. But it's true. It was a man's game when I got into it, and now there's plenty of amazing women, and well, not plenty. There needs to be more for sure.
Ravi and Geeta, do you want to?
Yeah, well, hold on.
Geeta,
so
Geeta.
I think you know, one of the things, I'm a female director as well, so there's a lot going on in my life on this level, and I think part of the thing is I think we need to stop seeing ourselves as females. There are so many great role models out there. Roseanne Barr is like one of my favorites. I grew up not only with a hilarious immigrant family, so I am just the magic of someone telling a story and making you laugh, and someone laughing when you tell a story. That's what we spend the rest of our lives wanting, whether we're just, you know, civilians or you do it for a living. And so it is the best job on earth to be around people who are funny and capture it. And as far as being a woman, it's just a byproduct. I mean, women are awesome. You know, I can have children, great. But other than that, you walk into a room, the worst thing we can do is see ourselves as women. And so I tend not to look at opportunities or look at a panel and go, oh, I'm the only chick on here. You know, I'm just like, I'm having a good time, it's great. Because
There's two chicks up here.
The problem, you know, the problem I'm having as part of this generation is that there is a victim thing that I see a lot. And in order to get through it, I mean, not that it doesn't exist, I'm just saying it's time to rock and roll. Like, we have plenty of great people, women that are out there that are hilarious, that are doing great things, and what we need is for all the people that see that as an awesome thing to just keep speaking up and working together and being assertive. You know, the people that tried to talk me out of directing and try to talk me out of being in this business for whatever, many reasons, you know, there were women, actually. I have never had so many women tell me not to go into this field. And so I think, forget it. We're just people, we piss like everybody else.
I don't think that's accurate, actually.
Speak for yourself.
Sitting
The
down.
last part was a little bit of a... I mean, I can think of so many instances in which, pissing differently has come into play. But other than that, I thought it was really moving, and that was, yeah.
My mother was hysterical, and she would give me and my friends a really hard time when we come home. She hated when my friends were in the house. Even though she loved them, she would tell us to go out and play, even if it was raining outside, just to get us out of the house. But also because she was learning English, curse words, American curse words, didn't have the same, potency. So she would call us like shitheads or dickheads, which was really funny to an 8th grader, 9th grader when your friend's mom is calling you that and giving you a hard time. So we all thought it was funny, and my friends thought it was a hoot. My mother would kill me if I was saying this, but it had no meaning to her to sit there and say that. Now, if we said a Turkish bad word, it was an anthem. It would be a horrible thing. So my mom was very funny and very much influenced me and still does to this day because she's like my father, she's very unique.
I have a group of friends in LA, and it's some Indians and the rest are filled out by, I'd say, 90% Jews, and we try to figure out, we're like, why are all of us attracted to being around each other? And we've talked about it, and we summed it up to, well, we all have the same mom.
Yeah.
That's where the comedy comes from, I think, is, funny moms are very much inspirational comedy. By the way, my favorite comedian is Ellen DeGeneres, just so you know. I just want to say, the way you put that question, that we didn't mention women, means we're against female comedy. That's a fairly false allegation and not a fair one. I think the reason for, like they said, is historical and it's patriarchal. But today there's so much good comedy coming from females. If you look at the TV shows that are being made, you're looking at nothing but amazing, powerful female protagonists right now. I think we're in the heyday of female comedy. If you were to list all the top female, at least in the acting world, the top comedic actors, I think you'd see most of them being women, and they are so smart and incredible.
And how about female filmmakers? The filmmaker question is a different question than the when did you learn to write jokes question. Most of the jokes are written in the process of trying to recover from some interaction with a woman. That's just how it is when you so let's give credit where credit is due. But for example, Lena Wertmuller is Swept Away and Seven Beauties are two of the movies that made me want to direct movies. And it's because they're romances, but they're also hilarious, and filled with pain. And they're not jokey. They're not overly comic. They're just comic to exactly the right degree. It's amazing to watch, really. And she's not even working in her, this is a German woman working in Italian. So you can imagine the genius involved in being able to translate not just from one culture to another, but from one language to another with actors who are from various nations on top of that. The influence by women question is different when you're talking about the writer's room versus when you're talking about making a film. The female.
And we also, by the way, we work with Genji Cohan, who does Orange Is the New Black, and she was in that writers' room with us as well.
Yes, she was.
But also just to put a cap on this, I think your point. I think Ravi said it's an historical issue as well. It's an art. Even in art, there is patriarchal attitudes. So you don't see great female opera composers. You don't see great female painters. Even though they may be out there, they did not sort of make the dead white European male canon to a large degree. And comedy is no different than those things in that sense. But I think, like all those other disciplines, you are seeing that changing in comedy perhaps more rapidly than any place else.
And also, I think we as a community are part of that change. So I think it's lovely that you asked the question, because we all need to constantly ask ourselves that question. Just like, we have a civil rights movement still going in so many different ways. I have to ask myself, these questions when I see someone who's Muslim or black or a man, and all these things come along with, you know, me perceiving them. So I think it's good to ask these questions constantly. I didn't get a commercial the other day because I literally was told our crew has never worked with a woman before. But I can't look at it that way. I have to look at, okay, you know, they don't get to work with me, whatever. You move on, because for every one person who thinks that way,
There was also a
there's
commercial
growing-
about urination, and she didn't seem to...
You know, there's 20, 30 people
She
who
insisted
don't
the
think
guy
that
sit
way.
down.
You know,
She's like,
there's-
yeah, you know, we all... She's like, I'm just going to stand up and take a piss.
But I'm
over there
saying
if
you
guys-
can't, you know, you can't, the way I see it, if it means anything, I'm just saying, like, as someone who's in the trenches, you know, trying to get my job, just to get a job, as I was telling him today, you know, I just think for every one person who thinks that way, I meet 50, 60 other people who don't think that way, and who give me a job. And so I can't really, you know what I mean, I can't focus on that. There's no time to focus on that. I'm not in the generation where we should focus on that.
I think another big part of the progress is having people who look like the people who need to be empowered in the position of giving that power. So that means now what we're seeing right now is, for the first time ever, you're seeing females being tapped to run studios. You're seeing, I mean, I think Fox just hired 2 black, like, presidents of comedy or something. Like, I don't remember what it was, but, you know, you're seeing, you know, I think it was Chris Rock, I heard in an interview once, and he was saying that, you know, the reason why it was so hard for so long, and it still is, to sell black movies is because the people who he's selling them to don't look at him, don't look like him, and so they don't understand what the nuances of these scripts. And I think you can say that's kind of part of the journey for, you know, and now, so everything's kind of symbiotically, I think, improving, and hopefully it continues to improve. And by the way, I agree with Geeta. I think it's great that you asked the question. I just didn't like how you asked it.
But real quickly, I also think that you know, aesthetically, breasts are sexy and penises are funny. I think that could be one of the reasons why too. That, you know.
And on that
mine
note,
is hilarious.
let's go to somebody else's question. Let's see.
Right here in the back left.
Well, you know what? Hang on 1 second, because let's go. We have a lot of people who want to ask questions, and we had some fun with this little subject.
We don't have a lot of time. 'Cause
yeah.
the Patels have to get to a couples massage.
Yes. Yes, back there.
Really
back
quick.
there. Yes.
Really quick. Mr. Levin, right? No, wait. Sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Levin.
Yeah. The title of your film, 5 to 7, is that somehow connected with Cléo de Saint-Concept? Because you're talking about women directors, and one of my favorites.
No, that's a movie about cancer.
Well,
You know, not traditionally a big.
okay, so no connection.
wellspring.
Okay, all right, thanks. Well,
no,
except that it's 5 to 7.
No.
Right.
Mine it refers to 5 à 7, which are the traditional French hours.
No, I know that. Yeah, no, just the question. Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right, good question. Next.
In the back
is
on the
anybody
right.
else?
In the back on the right.
Yes, over there. Yes.
Actually, this is for my son. He's Ryan. He's 13. And
You're going to ask a question
Could
to
you guys
him?
just do that privately by any chance?
Yeah, you guys could just do that on your own
directly
time.
to these people. Yes, go ahead, sir. Sorry.
he loves film. He just loves film. And you guys were talking earlier about your career paths and, you know, being lucky in the right place at the right time, or, you know, your passion for your craft. Is there you're all successful. Is there a common denominator between all of you where he can strive for?
Well, I think to give you the most honest answer, I think the most honest answer has been what you've heard from these people. They are all incredibly eclectic individuals with virtually nothing in common on the surface. And yet, at the same time, under the surface, we've discovered many universals that exist amongst these people. Some sort of catalyst that made them feel that they were funny. Some sort of a positive attention that they got because they were funny and verbal, because they had a creative mind. Parents that, in many cases here, which is a large percentage, I think, very supportive, loving parents who encouraged their muse, you know, and kept them moving forward, you know. Another factor that I always talk about for myself, luck. Luck is a big part of it. So these are not, again, there is no strict path. Some people went to school, like Dan went to Emerson. You know, Emerson's a great school. You're around a lot of creative people. You learn the technology, you know. I dropped out of NYU Film School after 1 semester. So there's no right answer, I think, to that. I think for your son, like for us, if he has loving, supportive parents, if he has a natural sort of proclivity for that sort of thing, and he's willing to work hard and face rejection, he will get an opportunity, I believe. I believe everybody will get that opportunity. It may not be the opportunity you think it's going to be, but you will get an opportunity to show your stuff, to display what you have developed and cultivated. And then when you get that opportunity, it's really up to you what you do with it at that point. You know, that would be my answer.
I think that's a great answer, but I think in addition to having a voice, I think it's about having a wide net about what purpose. Like why does he want to do this so badly? Because I think a lot of people falsely aim in one specific direction, like I'm going to be a stand-up comedian, I'm going to be an actor, when really all these things that motivate us to want to be those things are applicable to so many different paths in life. And so I think it's more about defining your voice and understanding who you are and how and being very open to the path from there.
Right. It's again. It's an obsession on some level. You have to really want to do it, and you have to really want to do it for the right reasons to some degree. I think if you're chasing fame or some of the superficial elements that might go along with that, that's going to wind up being a very empty experience. But if you are cultivating your voice, you know, and however it may manifest itself, it may not be stand-up comedy, it may not be movies or television, it may be something else that you manifest your voice in, but manifesting your voice and being in touch with that muse, I think, is the path to fulfillment also, if you're going to have any fulfillment in this life. So, but again, I don't think there's a common thread on the surface. And you may not be able to see those common threads unless we're up here kind of exploring it in this kind of psycho-history that we're doing here, you know?
I think also it's like another thing that leads to the lives that we have is not being good at anything else.
Right, we're bums.
You know, like you kind of just like, well, this is what I can do. I hope I can make it work, you know. And if you don't ever get rich at it, at least you're, you know, maybe doing what you love to do.
Yeah, and that's ultimately going to be the most satisfying part of it, really, if you get the opportunity to do what you love to do, which is a challenge in and of itself. Any other questions?
Geoff wanted to say something.
Oh, sorry, man. Sorry, of course.
This panel's full of questions.
No, I don't have a question. I just wanted to say something. When I decided I wanted to be a stand-up, I just never left the club. I did all the work outside, at home, but you never know. You got to be in the right place at the right time, but you never know what the right time is, but it's easier to figure out what the right place is. And once you figure out that, then you just never leave there. It's like he moved to LA and hung out outside the comedy, so that was the right place. He didn't know what the right time was, but it was the right place. And if you do all the work during the day, then at night you go to the right place. I did stand-up on this stage like 7 years ago, basically, but on accident. It was 1 in a million. I just never left the club. And then one night, it was Mike Birbiglia, and whoever was supposed to open for him just didn't show up. And I was there. And I opened for him at the club in Cincinnati. And that led to one more gig where it's like, you're pretty good, come do this. And then on that one, he took me all around the country. And one of them was right here. And it wasn't because it was luck, but I knew where the right place was, and I just never left that place.
Yeah, very cool answer. Incredible.
Sometimes you get arrested, sometimes you have a career.
Yeah, let's go right here to this woman here. Yes.
Good morning. I love the Patels. I loved your movie last night. I thought it was wonderful. I just want to see more. It was like the book ended for me last night. I need to read another chapter. What are your plans for, the future? It was absolutely wonderful. But
me. Okay. What are the plans? You mean with the movie? Oh, thank you. Well, by the way, they're very much I'll give you their phone numbers, and you will get more than you need, I promise.
We've really loved working together. I think this has been pretty awesome for Brother and me. you know,
It's been an awesome experience for our family.
So I think we're gonna keep going. You know, try to maybe develop a show, see if we can get some advice from all these guys. Actually,
Yeah, we're.
you know, it's just been great. I think mom and dad also, you know, it's been so fun to work with them and see what they can do, and it's all come out of such a very honest place for all of us. None of us really knew this was going to happen. For those of you who don't know, it came out of a family vacation video. So it's not like we sat there and said, okay, we're going to make a documentary. It was really like, let's just have fun. And 6 years later, this film, you know, came to you.
But to answer your question, I think for right now, we're gonna really enjoy what's happening. I mean, like, this is a really magical moment, I think, in all of our lives where we as a family get to experience something. I mean, it's super rare and it's
super weird
and weird and invasive, by the way. We went to Toronto for a festival, and Dad wanted to pay for everyone's, you know, hotel, which ended up being a motel, which he got through with some other Patel, because Patels own most motels.
75% off.
So $40 a night in downtown Toronto. Is it a steal or is it a shithole? It's the second thing, and I'm in a room this far from my sister.
Ravi gets in the bed. He gets in the bed. He sits on the bed. He goes, I wonder how many people have died here.
But, you know, I'm laying there, and Dad, they're all in my room, our room. Dad's drinking tea. Mom's, like, shoving food down my mouth. And, you know, Dad's like, ha, I tell you what, this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And you've seen the movie, so in the there's that joke about the nose with where I say, like, it took me a while to figure out that I didn't have a big nose, and in fact my head was too small. And my dad goes, ha, I mean, Ravi, can you believe this? All this press, I mean, it's really getting to me. I tell you what, my head is getting bigger and my nose is getting smaller. Am I right? So I think we're just enjoying the experience. It's really fun, and you know, I think these guys are gonna end up being famous.
Super sweet family. Great family, really. Thank you guys for being here. What else we have? We have another question?
Yep, toward the back left.
Oh, here we go. Yes, sir.
How you doing? Listen.
How you doing?
You guys covered so many different aspects. You covered the ethnicity and you covered female, you know, gender. Well, we didn't cover, I noticed, like a lot of the audience is middle-aged people. Now, you being from Brooklyn, hey, ho.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
As soon as you said it, I jumped up like a Pop-Tart. But I was like, no, forget about it. No, listen to me. No,
I owe you money?
I ain't Jewish. I'm from Long Island, so I'm having a hard time here. You know? I moved to Michigan, right? And I'm middle-aged, and I'm right at that point. I'm stuck. You know, I got in the union a couple of years ago on a Robert De Niro production. You know. And
congratulations.
Thank
Great.
you. I haven't done that much, but you know, stand-up comedy since I'm a little kid, and I got thrown out of the classroom and threw my teacher out of the classroom.
Right.
I knew I had it in me. But now,
I think we're in the same class. I actually.
You remember Sister Mary Aquinas? Come on, forget about it. You remember?
PS 100. That's what.
Anyway.
Talk in your real voice.
Okay. So anyway, back at the ranch. Being middle-aged, have you other comedians have seen?
Yes,
guys?
we're middle-aged. Let's move on.
I know.
Thank you.
I'm trying to make
you bunch of old fucks.
That's what I'm talking about.
We don't like women and middle-aged people.
Do you think like a 50? I just turned 50 last year, and I like having that 50-year-old. Oh man.
That's young, man. I don't consider that middle age.
What?
Oh, go ahead.
All right. Anyway. So have you seen people make it at that age?
Well, first of all, I'm gonna give you a few. The first example that pops into my head, which I'm sure you know already, is Rodney Dangerfield. One of the all-time great comedians who really didn't hit his stride till middle age. I think also the population is aging, and you see shows. You know, Curb Your Enthusiasm is about a middle-aged man. Louis is about a middle-aged man. You know, a lot of great comedy is manifested by middle-aged men. You know, it's another genre. There's females, there's ethnic groups, there's middle-aged people, there's older people. I think all those groups have spokespeople that are talking to their groups and hopefully finding a universal so that a middle-aged man could talk to any audience in the world, you know. But yes, I don't think there's any limitations on that. I think there's some great examples of people talking about middle-aged issues that wind up being very universal issues. And I think Louis and Larry David are two of the best examples that pop into my head right now. And Rodney was, again, a role model for a lot of people and a mentor to people like Sam Kinison also. So you could play that role at that point too. You have some wisdom from your life experiences that you could also pass on and share with people as well. So absolutely.
You should, at this point, you should probably worry less about making it and just start.
Right, because you need money to make a film. You need you have to go to medical school to be a doctor, but you could be a stand-up comedian in a week or at least do it, right? Get on stage and
I think he just did a short set right here for all of us.
That's right. And he did well. He did well.
No, but you were talking about making it, which I think is kind of a vague term, and I bet a lot of people who you think have made it wouldn't even refer that to themselves. But I was just beaming listening to this family talk about this one project they focused on and they made. And I think if you were at a point in life where you were up here and you made one film that you thought was terrific and really expressed what you thought you can do better than anything else, and we're lucky we live in a time where you can scrape together a little bit of money and go make something because there's digital cameras and people who love to be part of something. And I don't think making it a big sense. Focus on one thing you really think you can do and go make it. I think that would be something I would advise.
Making it is making it, essentially, is what you're saying.
Yeah, people say, how do you, give me, they want like one quick piece of advice, like on Twitter, they'll say, they expect me to respond in one tweet to how can I get into comedy? and the answer, unfortunately, it sounds very cynical, but like also part of the reason all of us do it is we just sort of, all the reasons we've said, we just do it, and so that's what I say to people is I just say, well, you just got to do it. That's my advice to you is just do it and keep doing it and see what happens, because perseverance is huge. Like in the case of Geoff, like he stood outside that one building.
Even yourself, I mean, you started off in San Diego and you've gotten to this point and you've faced many adversities and you've faced rejection and something kept you going and also fueled your voice at the same time. The very things that were the adversaries wound up also making you who you are, and that's a very important part of this, I think, is being open to that process, that artistic process. Any other questions?
Front right.
Front right.
Could we possibly hear from Mr. and Mrs. Patel as to where they got their comedic
chops?
Beginning. Right.
Yes, I'd love to hear from them.
Did you just translate that question?
Your question is where did the comedy came from?
Do you see why I had to do that? It still didn't work.
I get it. Now it makes
what
sense.
it's like living in this family.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you.
I really didn't know that we were that funny, actually. And I'm so glad I didn't know, otherwise I would have made a stupid of myself. No, I don't know. I guess we love life. We enjoy it. We are so blessed with what we have. And rest is, I guess, God's given gift, I guess, a blessing. I don't know what else.
I think I want to add to that it so happened, and I know many of you may appreciate even that I think we both come from a very, very, very same background. That's one thing. We come from within an 8-mile radius back home. We have pretty much both sides, similar financial, similar education. And then my mom and dad believed in a God, that they believed in a God, and so moderate, but not so religious.
This is turning into arranged marriage propaganda.
So what I want to say is that, like, my dad used to play piano. My brother, he's here, and he plays flute and piano and all that. So because of that, there is some art in our blood. That's where I am getting at. And I think we both have been so social, where we never have been shy. So every time there is some even function going, and they are like, "Oh, do you guys want to do a small skit?" And we are like, "Okay." So we both, we both get up and we are like, "What should we say?" And we just talk about or do something about the person who is hosting the party, and people started loving it, liking it, and they're like, oh, you should do it again. So I said, okay. So that's how we started, I think.
I enjoy writing skits, so I've been writing all those skits and we acted out.
Yeah.
Dad is also now a writer, by the way. He wrote a screenplay.
Yes, I wrote my first screenplay in the last 2 years.
Is it a comedy? Is it a comedy or
It's a comedy.
It is
It's
a
based on every story
romantic-
I've ever told him about myself.
It is a romantic comedy with a very kind of a journey, a life journey in growing up, finding yourself, sort of.
What's the title of it?
Well, we don't.
It's called Good Will Hunting.
But my kids think it is great. So.
I just want to add, obviously, we're their kids, and making this movie has been an awesome opportunity to appreciate them in a way, that I wouldn't have been able to before, as a director and seeing them on camera. And I've, that question you just asked, we've been asked frequently, so we've thought about it a lot. And I think it comes out of the fact that they're insanely loving people and very giving, and there's. I think comedy is a mechanism by which you bring people together and give them comfort, and that's what I've seen in them. So I just wanted to add to that.
Yeah, we brought like our whole family here. We settled them. Even I taught them how to drive, and then got them a driver license. And we.
So you can blame her.
I mean, and I'm a firm believer, and I think he is also. He's very, very positive, and I'm a firm believer that you give out there, and if you give on this side, it comes around and comes to you. So not to worry.
By the way, that I've noticed that about this city specifically.
Yes, this city is that way, and I even was talking to someone this morning, and I'm like, how can you be all volunteers and saying, oh, no problem. Oh, no problem. Like we have
It's irritating how nice everybody is here, right?
So I was even telling, I said, such a charity town. This is so nice. And we come from a small town, very small town back home. And our town is somewhat like this, when one person, like when we came to United States, the whole town get together and they send us away while walking all the way to the bus stop. And it's just so beautiful. And I was so touched when I saw this first time in last 42 years in the United States. It's so good here. So thank you for having us.
Great, thank you. All right, should we try to squeeze in a couple more questions while we still have a little time?
Right up front.
Right there.
Oh, thank you very much. Welcome to Traverse City, everybody. I hope you're enjoying yourself.
Thank you.
We do a lot of local comedy around here, and we're talking about having a funniest person in Traverse City contest. So over
There's
there,
a guy
he's
back
welcome.
there.
He's gonna win it. We've got our winner right over there.
He's welcome. I found.
Talk about a turnaround.
There he is. All right. I found there's a.
We'll hook you guys up after.
Last comic standing, things like that. I found judging comedy is a very subjective process where often, it's diversity or lack of diversity. How can we make this a success? How can we, have the judges be open-minded?
The funniest person contest. How you want to know how the judges will remain objective in a situation like that? Is that your question?
Really?
I'd say let the whole audience vote, because they do every time you perform. The audience votes by either laughing or not laughing.
Yeah, and even on Last Comic Standing, when the judges are making their decisions, it's based a lot on how well the comedians have done with the audience. Ultimately, you have to deliver the goods. If you don't get laughs, you haven't done well. If you get laughs, you've done well. So it's a pretty simple criteria for who's funny and who's not, ultimately. It's not quite as scientific as baseball statistics, but you still can pretty much tell who's done well. And on this panel, everybody scored big today. I think you would all agree. We had a really funny panel.
But you could rig it though, right? You could bring in a lot of your friends, and they could laugh the most. It's kind of like the voting on online voting. It's like get the most of your friends. I mean, can't you bring in a lot of your friends and say just laugh the most so I can win this funny?
That's sort of how
that's how those contests.
That's how early stand-up works for a lot of people.
Right,
It's
you
just
bring
the
in a lot of-
audience is your friends. Because no one's going to pay to see you because they don't know who you are. So you invite all your friends to come down. But I found that friends and relatives can be the worst at, because laughter's a hard thing to fake. you know, sometimes, and you know, like if like
Never
my
worked on a
parents
sitcom, obviously.
yeah, right. But the writers of the sitcom standing around laughing and everything. But yeah, my parents, like, sometimes, you know, they didn't get some of my jokes, you know, so they're in the audience, and they'll just ride those ones out that they don't get. They won't just sit there and laugh anyway, you know. And it's the same with your friends. Your friends are the worst, because if you invite them more than once, they've already heard all the jokes. So then they really got to be good actors to pretend they enjoy it.
Did you have your first three? I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you have your first 3 minutes when you went on stage? Did you have it planned out, or did you just go up there and start riffing?
I not only had it planned out, I had a bag full of props. Like I started off as a prop comic, and and I pulled things out of a bag, and just like some of them, there weren't even jokes. I just pull it out of the bag and show it to everybody, but it was odd enough that it got laughs. I mean, I was very influenced at the time by Andy Kaufman. So and Pee Wee Herman, and lots of strange influences. So
I don't want to plug anything, but we're gonna have. Sorry to interrupt. Just to say, we're gonna have a winter Traverse City Comedy Festival.
Yeah. That's how I first found Traverse City. Was I came to the comedy festival, and somebody said, "There's also a festival in the summer," and I said, "Oh, I'm going to go to that one." That sounds like the festival for me.
But we are going to do this winter thing also, and
I'll be there this year.
That might be a place to also do this sort of competition if you're interested. So you should talk to some of the people that are sort of organizing.
February something through something.
Yes, right.
Is there a date yet, Lori?
I don't know actually.
8 through 12 or something like that.
let's take another question if we have time. Yes, right over there. I'll try to get to everybody if I can.
So my question is, in the early stages of writing for all of you, when you first began writing jokes, did you write jokes that you thought weren't that funny, that bombed when you performed them, you know, for the stand-up comics? And how did you get past that and start writing good jokes? And where do you get your inspiration from for writing jokes moving forward?
I'm inspired by only women comedians. I just want to get that out there right now. No men, right? Thumbs down. Yeah, all the jokes sucked for years. But it's like everything else. You just do it. You do something 100 times. Eventually, you'll get good at it.
Yeah, it starts off at a very embryonic process. You heard everybody talking about things that made them laugh, things that influenced them. I think, normally kind of start out trying to be funny like the people that you find funny, you know, and we go into school the next day after Get Smart was on or something funny was on, or a comedian would be on, Johnny Carson, and you'd want to do their jokes. You'd want to sort of be like them, and your personality and their personalities would sort of merge for a while, and then slowly the cocoon of that would open up, and your personality would hopefully emerge, and your voice would emerge. You know, and there's different versions. Look, there are people who are class clowns. They're funny from day one. You know, I'm listening to Ravi talk. I could just tell from his rhythms that he was a funny kid. You know, I know that.
Thank you, Larry.
People who are very shy and reserved and not sharing, and they wind up being hilarious people also. So it's really about you, who you are, and kind of continuing to cultivate your own voice and be willing, when people don't laugh, to not get fully deterred by that. That's, to me, a crucial part of this process, is getting your ass handed to you a couple of times and still being able to go on. You know?
I'd like to ask the stand-ups how many times they did get their ass handed to them. I mean, I've heard from even some of the best comics in the world, it was 1.5 years of not getting. I mean, what is the actual number of days of humiliation?
I got those laughs that first time I did my first cute little 3-minute set in front of a bunch of people that were just seeing a series of people doing just 3 minutes and all sort of amateurs or whatever. And so then when I, kept pursuing it, then that's when things went poorly. But you always they laughed at that the first time I did it, and so it's sometimes as a comic, sometimes if you're telling a joke night after night and it's not getting laughs, suddenly on the 5th or 6th time you tell it, something will click, you'll change one word or something, and then suddenly it's getting laughs, and it's really trial and error. But fortunately, once you get good at it and have been doing it for a while, if you say something nobody laughs at, you know in your head, well, the next thing I say will get them to laugh. Like, it's hard to bomb, like, like go out there and really like not get a laugh for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Like that's pretty tough to do after you've been doing it for a while. You know?
It's funny also, I'm thinking about casting sessions where it's a very similar process where people come into a casting session and read lines from a script and it just sounds like, you know, somebody talking in a foreign language. It's so incredibly unfunny. And then one person will come in with a slightly different rhythm or accenting a different word or having a certain tone to their voice that suddenly makes it sing also. And I think you have to be open in the same way that you have to be open to poetry or those sort of things. You have to be open to the sounds and the rhythms of it as well. You know, start to learn those things, you know. And the best way to learn it is by watching comedians that you admire.
Yeah, and one thing to toss in is, you know, even in this room today, there's a difference between a lovely mid-sized laugh and a real power laugh, you know. And those real power laughs are the clue that a joke is actually good, or a line designed to get a laugh is actually a good line, as opposed to something in the mid-range which might work some nights and might not work other nights. And so the idea is to get as many of those big bullets to fire as you can. And I think it takes, you know, it takes time, and sometimes you miss, and you never know what a good line is, you know, because every audience is different and every room is different.
I'm mad about you and Seinfeld. I'm sorry. Did you all change, when you were actually shooting, would you change dialogue on the spot if something didn't seem to be working, or would you all stay very on book?
I'm mad about you. We always were looking for a better line. I mean, that was a habit that I got into, was looking for alts, looking to top things, looking to excavate every piece of gold that was possibly there.
We would huddle up and somebody would pitch something and Larry would say, you know, let's go with that. But you got to have actors who can not only see the funny, but also remember the line if it's, you know, 15 words long, and integrate it into whatever's coming around it, and they don't have a chance to rehearse it. But, you know, the benefit is the audience doesn't know it's coming, and they're so thrilled that you can change it around right before their eyes.
It keeps it fresh, and also the dynamic. Vic touched on the idea of the dynamic of the audience. You do not know what this dynamic is going to be like till you start. You don't know whether this is a good audience, a hot audience, a sort of apathetic audience, whether you're going to have to win this audience over, whether you're going to wind up alienating this audience. Every audience has its own personality to some degree. I remember we did the contest on Seinfeld, which is one of the funniest episodes in sitcom history, in my opinion, and it died. It died that night, you know, with the live audience, and we were like freaking out because we all knew it was so funny. But the audience was like, they had waited a long time; they just weren't there together. You know, it's one of those things that happens. You know, lesser shows got bigger laughs sometimes inexplicably, and we had that experience on Mad About You too.
Incredible pains are taken to make sure that the audience is properly lubricated. I mean, we're bringing in pizzas and, you know, metric tons of M&Ms. Just give them enough sugar to get to 7:15, and then we don't. Whatever happens to them happens. We've got.
You got to time the sugar like you time the drugs, because if they start to crash, that's the wrong time.
Asleep. We got a guy who comes in called a warm-up, guys. I'm sure you guys know, who for 40 minutes before anything starts, just has him singing and hits him in the head, whatever it takes. So.
You just hope it doesn't peak at the wrong time,
right.
You know.
You know, another good well of knowledge for I know there's a few people who are either pursuing comedy or interested in it, is I think the WTF podcast with Mark Maron is anthropological. Like, it is this guy who has been a comedian for a long time and has interviewed every single person in comedy in some shape or form. That to me is a great starting point for a lot of these questions.
Great. Do we have time for some more? Yes, back there.
Left. For Geoff, I had a question. Your father was an evangelistic minister. Was he good at his profession, and did he influence you?
Yeah. What happened?
What's wrong with you people? Is this like a film festival and there's another thing to go see?
I think someone cut one over there, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up watching him on stage.
Religion in America.
And performing once a week, I guess, to some degree. But watching him preach, every now and then he would throw in a joke. They weren't good, but everyone would laugh. And that was always my favorite part of the morning, because it was boring. Right? I don't want to, maybe, no, he was good at it. And we moved a lot. Whatever. I heard the same sermons a bunch of times. He stopped writing at some point.
Oh, but that sort of teaches you, though, that that people can get away with, you know, the same material
just keep
in front of a
changing
different crowd. Yeah, yeah.
Well, again, when Vic and I were kids, to talk about the Catskills, a guy could come up with a routine that he could do for like 30 years because there wasn't any internet. You know, they didn't show up on TV all that often. Maybe the Ed Sullivan Show if they were lucky. And you could actually kind of live off a single routine. There was a guy I remember named Larry Best who had one routine about eating an apple while giving directions. Like, that was his whole act. Like, he could do that for 30 minutes, you know, and he did it. I remember seeing him as a little kid and as a grown man doing that same bit. But now you have to also generate a lot more material as well. Would you not agree with that? You need...
Oh, absolutely.
I do.
Keep it fresh.
I agree with that, but I also would want to.
Right.
Like, it gets boring. At some point, you tell a joke enough times, it's like a big deal. This worked again. Like, I want to try something.
Yeah.
I
Right,
like
well,
the
that's
rush
part of the gambling nature, I think, of doing stand-up comedy. Also, living on the edge that way is about not getting set in your ways, not getting complacent, and sort of challenging yourself in some way.
It's a lot easier to switch up the set list when it's just you standing there talking and no one knows what you were going to talk about. You can just, you know, like, it's not like a band where you have to turn to the other members and be like, no, let's not play this one tonight.
right.
But I remember when Robert Plant, when they asked Led Zeppelin to do a Led Zeppelin reunion tour, and Robert Plant said, the thought of going back and playing songs that I played 20 years ago and just doing that in my age of life right now just doesn't seem fun to me. I'd rather do new stuff. And he was doing the Alison Krauss project and other projects. Yeah, I mean, like, new work is like, that's exciting. That's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, so. Very important, very important. Yes, ma'am. Sir, sorry.
There is an answer to that question because I think the answer is all of you guys didn't give up, all you people.
Yeah.
The ones that gave up are not here. So the answer is don't give up.
Hey, use the mic, dude.
My question to the panel is, my question is to Larry. I mean, this panel is hysterical. So my question is, Larry, who died and left you in charge?
Well, I don't think anyone died, but I think somebody slept. And hopefully he's waking up. But yeah.
There he is.
Oh, my God. Hey. How are you? You have?
The whole time?
You asked some shitty questions. What's going on? I don't get it. Well, we did pretty good, though, didn't we, in your absence? Oh, cool. Great.
Do we want to catch him up on the Mel Brooks stuff, or
what's that?
Do we want to catch him up on the Mel Brooks questions?
I think I'll go back. We'll give him a review later. You know. Thank you for being here. Michael Moore's here, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for allowing me to do this. And this has been a revelation for me to meet all these really cool people. I know Vic. I know Doug for a long time. Everybody else is a new acquaintance, and incredibly funny, incredibly interesting, incredibly intelligent, incredibly insightful people. So I think we're all very lucky to have this panel today, and I'm really happy to be part of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you.